Welcome back to HardBall. A South Carolina Republican with conservative cred to spare is facing 4 primary challengers because he's not right-wing enough. It's an effort by conservatives to purify the party, distill it down to its core. And speaking of the conservative core, Sarah Palin addressed bankers and business executives in Hong Kong today, during a speech during which she criticized President Obama's policies and decisions and praised Ronald Reagan. Is this a step back to the big stage for her? And with the polarizing Palin back in action in efforts to purify the party in the South, what's the future of conservatism in this country? Well, Sam Tannenhouse is editor of the New York Times Week in Review and the New York Times Book Review. He's author of the great new book, The Death of Conservatism. Sam, thanks for joining us. Your book points to a traditional thread in conservatism, which is to preserve what's good and fight for what's good and correct what isn't. Not to be a constantly insurrectionist, troublemaking party. No one is listening to you.
I guess not, Chris. By the way, Gaddafi does a great Borat imitation, I think. Look, what's going on here in South Carolina is you've got a guy who doesn't need to be purified. He is true blue or true red ideological conservative. Why are they going after him? Because he was one of those who thought Joe Wilson dishonored the House that he's a member of. Conservatism is supposed to be about honoring and respecting political traditions and institutions. That's what poor Inglis did, and now they're saying he's not pure enough. It's interesting, too, because what we see is the old culture war coming back. Nobody's looking at poor Inglis's record. They're saying he piled on the other guy. This isn't about policy or even politics. It's a kind of verbal war that they're waging against this guy. Also, notice how when you see a party reduced to its kind of minority core, as this group is, everybody runs to the right. You might think when they've been kind of pushed over to the side there that they would want to crawl back to the center, because that's how the Republican Party got into power in the first place, by capturing the center.
Well, let me report to you another way of looking at this, so I'll challenge you.
All right.
You're something of an intellectual. You've written great books about Whitaker's Chamber.
Don't call me names.
I'm going to call you that because I'm going to refer you to P.T. Barnum, one of my heroes, who said, if you want a crowd, start a fight. That's how they used to get people to come to the circus. They would have a fist fight on the street corner, and then after everybody came up, they handed out the bills and said, come to the circus. It was before they marched the elephants through the streets. Another Republican reference. The Republican Party has climbed back to within beating distance of the Democrats. Look at the new NBC poll we just have out today in the Wall Street Journal. 43% prefer the Democratic-controlled Congress, 40% prefer the Republican. They are now, having had their rear ends kicked last election and the one before, are now within 3 points of taking back the House, perhaps. I'm just asking you this. You advise them to be tame and civilized. It's the crazies, the birthers, the flags, the nuts, the crazy charge against Barack Obama that seem to be working.
You know, Chris, it's a great way to draw a crowd and get people into the tent. But we've got a tent. We've got a country with 300 million people in it. And what we're seeing is very conspicuous thousands who are calling a lot of attention to themselves. Some people on cable TV, maybe not your network, but some others who are also making a lot of noise.
You can take out the maybe.
The great William F. Buckley said the conservative movement has always had its share of noisemakers and pyrotechnicians. That's who we're hearing from now. But the fact is, much of the country isn't there. Another point, too, to remember, Chris, is if we look back to the last period in our history where politics was conducted at the street level, it was the left that was doing it in the late 1960s. That's what gave conservatives and the Republican Party the ticket to get back into office, because they were the defender of institutions, of social order.
Oh, there's one point that I'm looking at, because I'm a practical guy, not a theoretician like you, Sam, and I will do this. I'm looking at Eric Cantor, who's a very sharp #2 guy in the House, very smart, from Richmond, Virginia. The guy is acting very cautious. He had a town meeting the other day that was not a bunch of fireworks and crazy people yelling crazy things. It was very civilized, on the mark. I think he's got the polls that show Republicans, if they want to get back into power, have to be, even though they got to be conservative, they got to be conservative grown-ups.
Well, sure, that's exactly right. You know, even when you have the great little statistic about Twitter, we kind of forget, if you look at the reporting on this, it's actually older people and not younger people who use Twitter. Sure, and you know, it's interesting, too, that one surprisingly strong demographic for the Republican Party, it emerged in the 2008 election, and everybody looked away because of the raptures about President Obama. was the elderly. There's a Census Bureau report that shows their numbers are growing. They're a major constituency. The same people who are worried that their Medicare is going to be taken away are the same ones who said to George Bush, don't cut into our Social Security. I think we're actually looking at a demographic shift in the country that may have as much to do with age as it does to do with the regional
I think the
differences.
older people, without any slight against them, because I'll be there soon, but I want to tell you something. They're so happy with socialism, they don't want anybody else to have it.
That's it.
Because they've got Medicare, which is free, and they deserve it for working all their lives, but when everybody else wants it, a lot of Democrats want it, they say, no, we can't have that kind of government-run program. Let me ask you about this thing about foreign policy. Is the Republican Party 3 years from now when they have an election, are they going to be the hawk party, the neoconservative party? Are they going to be a party that's raising the flag of war? Or are they going to be going the other way? It looks like they're still the hawk party.
It does look that way, Chris. And I thought you made a great point, and Pat did too, about the ideological, or rather political, bind that Barack Obama has put himself in. Because during the campaign, it was very easy. It was a great line to say, we took our eye off the ball in Iraq. We should have been in Afghanistan. All the while forgetting Afghanistan's even worse. It's even harder.
Right.
We're learning now that we didn't even have decent intelligence coming all through the Bush years. They don't even know where to fight the battles right now. And what Obama was able to do politically was to set himself up in a position where he looked as if he had the more rational answer. But it may not look that way in the months ahead, and we know historically the country tends to trust Republicans.
One brutal question: are we going to knock off Karzai the way we knocked off ZM in '63?
Well, you know, it's funny when we did that.
It's not. I'm serious. That's a deadly, awful question. But how do we get out of the bind of backing a guy who stole an election? How do we get around this? This is like Darlan in North Africa. We've cut a deal with somebody who shouldn't be there. Remember, Darlan? It's a problem.
We've made those mistakes many times. DM, too, was a huge mistake. We ended up, we assassinated the guy, and then we do it in the name of democracy, and we alienate the people we're supposed to save. I think Dee Dee Myers is right. It sounds like a bad old movie we've been through before.
I know, and I don't know who Big Min's going to be this time. Anyway, thank you, Sam Towns. Good luck with the book, The Death of Conservatism.